Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Katie Doyle. I am the president of the Indiana Stonewall Democrats. And to celebrate Pride this month, I am teaming up with the Indiana Democratic Party and continuing our conversations with cocktails. So this week, we are speaking on, again, LGBTQ issues and topics and questions in relation to Indiana, and specifically people of color in the LGBTQ community. So tonight we have two special guests with us, Henry Fernandez and Nicole Bolden. Thank you both for being here.
Hey, glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Enthusiasm. So first of all, you brought a cocktail, right? Henry, what are you drinking? What's your cocktail?
I mixed something special, limeade with a splash of vodka. So kind of a summery drink.
Absolutely.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it does. Refreshing. Nicole?
Refreshing.
I went pretty just straight peach Crown Royal.
Oh, I don't even think I've heard of that. Yeah, I'm gonna try that.
They only release it during the summer, so it's good.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. So that's maybe why I'm not aware of it. But perfect. So before we kind of get started on talking both about not only your history, but the history of people of color within the LGBTQ community and just LGBTQ folks around Indiana, I kind of wanted to hear from both of you. Some people may not be aware of what your current positions are within the state party and kind of your role within the community. So would you guys like to start off with that and kind of tell us, who you are and what you're currently up to? Ladies first. You want to go, Madam Clerk?
Sure. My name is Nicole Bolden. I am the Bloomington City Clerk. I was first elected back in 2015, re-elected in 2019. I also serve as the Secretary for the Indiana Stonewall Democrats. And I was recently appointed as the Deputy Chair for Cities and Towns for the Indiana Democratic Party. Is that every question that you asked? I hope.
I think so.
Okay.
No, that was great. Congratulations, Madam Deputy Chair.
Thank you.
Great to be on today's broadcast with Katie and Nicole, two people I wholeheartedly admire. And I am currently the state treasurer of the Indiana Democratic Party. I am into my second term, which is 4-year terms. And I've been involved with LGBTQ politics since I arrived in Indiana 20 years ago, and also with Latino advocacy issues as well. And my involvement was critical back in 2006 when my two kids...
Still critical, just so you know. Your involvement
say that again?
Your involvement
is critical.
So critical, Henry.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you. Well, it started because really in Indiana when my then partner, now my spouse, and I moved to Indiana 20 years ago, and we brought our kids with us who were 2 years old, and we wanted to have them, swim at the local YMCA, and we joined our local branch and got our pictures taken, and my credit card was charged, and a week later, our membership was canceled summarily. There was no recourse to challenge it, and said, your membership is canceled immediately because you do not meet our definition of a family. So I had just been in Indianapolis a couple of months, and I put together a group of people, Wayne Crucier, Joe Miller, Kathy Gibson, Linda Perdue, and others. And they helped me strategize on how to go forward. And essentially, we challenged the Central Indiana YMCA, and within a week, my membership was restored. But I continued working with the YMCA for about 6 months until their policy was changed, so that it wasn't just a one-off situation, but different types of families could be admitted into the YMCA for membership. And that's how I get involved with some people who were politically active. And eventually I ran for school board, and I can tell you a little about that later.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. You're going straight into the history, which, kind of brings me to my next question, which I think if I, have this right, you're the first LGBTQ person elected for nonpartisan office when you were first elected school board. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about, kind of that run and how you
Sure. Well, let me say that when our two kids turned 5, our twin boys, our local school district, Lawrence Township, had an introduction to kindergarten for parents in April prior to the school year beginning, and as a Latino, openly gay Latino, we went to this orientation meeting, and I noticed in the orientation at a school where half the faculty spoke Spanish because they had a Spanish immersion program. The entire 1.5 or 2 hour orientation was conducted in English, when in the back of the room were a group of parents who clearly, for me, and I confirmed it by going up to them and talking to them, they didn't speak a word of English. And then also, so I was wondering how they were being left out of the educational system. If this was their first exposure with a public school district where nothing was understood, how were they ever going to come back to another meeting in the school district, wasting their time? But what I also noticed during that time is that all the forms I filled out were name of the student, name of the mother, and name of the father. And I was wondering, well, I need to scratch, mother off of all of these applications. My kid's birth certificates from New Jersey listed both my same-sex partner and me as parents. So I had to correct everything. And so I decided that day that something needed to be done. The principal invited me to be part of the PTA and bake cookies and raise money like that. But I thought, you know what? It's not going to work. This is systemic issues that we need to talk about. As a person of color, as an LGBT person, there are things that need to be changed. So I ran for school board. I got the endorsement. I went through campaign training from the Victory Fund, LGBT Victory Institute in Washington, D.C., as an openly gay candidate. So I went through training. I got the endorsement of the organization. I also was applied for slating and in the community group, and also I applied for endorsement of the teachers union, and I got it. And when I won the election in 2006, unbeknownst to me, I was told by the Victory Fund that they did not have any record of any openly gay candidate ever winning an election in Indiana. So I was, by coincidence, I became the first openly gay person to win a candidate to win an election. Now I'm sure other people have served, but we're not necessarily totally out with endorsements from.
Yeah, we're not here for that, but we support. Oh, that's great. Yeah, you should. Enjoy my cookies at the bake sale while I change your policy. I mean, absolutely. That's we appreciate your you running and you making.
And I would urge those people who are in the audience to also consider running for office, because a seat at the table makes a difference. Absolutely makes a difference. And while I was on the school board, not only was I able to advocate, for example, that parents be surveyed in Spanish and focus groups be conducted in Spanish to determine what Latino parents wanted for their kids, but I also ensured that we changed the non-discrimination policy in the school district. We added sexual orientation and gender identity.
Listen
in
up.
2006 or 2007, gender identity. And I thought over the objections of our HR director and some other people who didn't even want to include gender identity because they felt that a teacher transitioning in the middle of the year would be completely disruptive for the school district, we still passed it. And I was able to get a coalition of folks in spite of some community opposition, and we passed that change 5-0 on our school district. I think we were the second of almost 300 school districts to add gender identity in our non-discrimination policy. One of the most gratifying moments I had in my public life was the day after we passed that non-discrimination clause. The parent of a first grader whose daughter had been attending the school district as a female, whose trans daughter had been attending as a female. She wrote to me and said, I never thought this school district would guarantee that she would have an equal education. And for me, that was a very, very moving thing, because it's about, support for our community, for our kids, and even when they're, as young as kindergartners.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And what's kind of not ironic, because that seems kind of more of like a depressing word for it, but we're still Senator Ford is still talking about those kinds of things in the state house to make it a statewide thing. Taxpayer dollars shouldn't be put into schools that are discriminating against anyone, not just to say LGBTQ folks. So, but that's I appreciate your service and your dedication and sticking with that. And we also with Madam Clerk have another first, as the first LGBTQ person of color elected to a citywide office in the state. So we love. Hard enough to convince a woman to run for office, let alone all the other things. So tell us a little bit about your journey to serve the people of Bloomington, Indiana.
Well, mine was my journey was a little different. I was working in the clerk's office at the time, and I decided to. The previous city clerk decided not to run again, and somebody else was planning on running for the office. And I had a lot of people around me who said, Nicole, you should run. And I said, no, not going to happen. I'm really not a person who I just did not want to run for office. I didn't want to be out there. I'm very private. It's not my thing. And it took a lot of people talking to me and saying, this is something you should do. And finally I decided, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. And it was while I was starting my run that I kind of looked around and realized in our county there was only one Black elected official in our county, and that was my mother. Oh. And she was and she's a judge here in Monroe County. So looking around our county and saying, okay, there's one Black elected judge. That's it. Mm-hmm. And so once I was elected, there was two, and that was it. And so I looked at her and I said, hey, we've got a Black caucus and we should do something here. So then I thought, okay, let's go ahead and form a Black caucus. And so it was, and we formed a Black caucus and so we could have more Black people elected. It didn't strike me at the time, because there are a lot of LGBTQ Black elected, or a lot of LGBTQ elected officials in this area. So it didn't strike me for a long time that I was that I was singular in the state, because I'm used to moving around in spaces where there are a lot of LGBTQ people. I was used to it when I was growing up. I was used to it here in Bloomington. I've moved in this bubble throughout my entire life, so I'm very comfortable in my space, and it did not strike me as anything different until somebody pointed it out and said, hey, you're the only out woman of color to hold elected office in the state of Indiana. And I'm shocked, and not a small amount of appalled as well, because that's a little horrifying. We've got a big state. It should just
glad no one told you ahead of time. Like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, we have a big state. There are a lot of elected offices, and it shouldn't just be one.
Right. Well, you look around your community and you see, what the diversity, and not correlating that to who's representing,
no,
is big. I mean,
exactly. And you're not just talking about it's. At the local level, and you've got township and school board and local and county offices, not to mention just this, and then the state house, and then you've got the federal offices as well. One? Really? That's just not enough. So it was very frustrating, and that was kind of the moment where it was like, okay, obviously I need to start talking more and reaching out more, because it's not enough to just kind of move around in the bubble. you have to start reaching out more and doing more for the community and start talking to more kids and everything else. So that was how I got to where I was. But it was more of a focus on getting more people of color elected in our community, which is what I was looking at first, because really, even though we have a fairly small population, there was a disproportionate number of people of color anyway. So now we're trying to work on that, and more LGBTQ people, and more women. And Monroe County has all women holding office for our commissioners right now, which is great. I'd like to see more women of color holding office across the board. I'd like to see more LGBTQ plus people holding office. So we have a ton of work to do.
Absolutely.
Here and across the state.
But I mean, it starts with amazing people like you, whether you knew you're going to end up running for office or not, you saw an issue that mattered to you and you kind of went after it and realized, kind of where and how that change happens, to be able to, insert yourself in those positions, whether you might not have wanted it or not. But here you are. And,
Well, and now that I'm here, and now that I have, to use Henry's term, a seat at the table,
yes.
I don't want to be the only person sitting at the table now. I want more people here with me. So,
Perfect segue to my next question, which is, kind of what I'd say. What is it like to be the first? But we kind of heard that, and I'm sure it's slightly scary, but also sometimes you, like Nicole, kind of live in this bubble where you're almost unaware. But what are some of the biggest issues for LGBTQ people of color, and what is it like for you to kind of be, or what does it, mean to you to kind of be that voice at the table, whether it's you by yourself or, hopefully sometimes in certain situations and in the future, with others around you, but kind of what does it mean to be that voice, and what are the, issues that you feel are important? Henry, you want to go first?
Sure. And by coincidence, when I was elected a school board member in 2006, Karen Horseman, a Latina who was on the Indianapolis City Council, Karen Celestina Horseman, had left her post. So I became the only Latino elected official as a school board member in a city of Indianapolis with 11 school districts, several municipalities, county officials, etc. Probably my guess is like a couple of hundred elected officials. And so not only was I the only gay, but I was also the only Latino in a metropolitan area of 1 million people. And I hate to say this, but you're called on to talk about issues that my background is in education. I have a doctorate in education, 3 master's degree in education, but it's tough for me to talk about filling potholes, for example, or healthcare issues. I know that we have to do both, but right. I'm not that's not my expertise. But anyway, it's tough being one, and what we need to do going forward is to continue to build the bench to ensure that more people follow us. And for the Latinx community, one of the things that struck me was when in 2008 the Indiana Democratic Party had its biannual state convention in Indianapolis, and during the convention, rooms are reserved for caucuses to meet, and on the program was the IDAC, the African American Caucus, and Stonewall had its caucus, and there was a room for the Latinos to meet. And so I went. I was so excited that to go there. And when I saw it on the program, I called the Democratic Party, and Jenny Hill was the executive director at the time. And I said to her, "Who's running this? I didn't know that the Indiana Democratic Party had a Latino caucus." And she said, "Well, Henry, we have the room reserved, but there's no caucus. So I encourage you to go and let me know what you guys discuss." So I went in 2008 to the state convention room that was assigned for Latinos, and there were about 25 or 30 other Latinos at the state convention. And I just simply got up in the front of the room and said, we don't have a caucus. Let's just talk about issues important to us. Right. And that led to Jenny Hill asking me and others to form a Latino caucus, and we did so about 11 years ago. We created the organization, incorporated, and we were accepted by the State Central Committee as as the official Latino caucus. And that will help us build the bench by having a stream of Latinx young people and others who are within the system and have a voice and a seat at the table at the State Central Committee.
Absolutely. Yes. Shout out to the Indiana Democratic Latino Caucus. They are still a thing. You can go to dems.org to find their information, to sign up, to join. Elise Schrock is all over it. She's great. She's great. Get you connected to your people and the caucus and let you know kind of what's going on there. So that's, I love the fact that they just set up a room without, even having one. I mean, maybe that's, sometimes that's, a great step just to get people there and involved. That I didn't, I wasn't aware of that, but yeah. I know they need, always room for more members, within Stonewall, IDAC, all of the caucuses.
I think our chair also has a priority to ensure that this year there are 2 caucuses that are missing that we would need to ensure that we create. One of them is the Asian Pacific Islander American Caucus, and also the Disability Caucus. I hope that we can get those 2 started and also bring them to the table at the State Central Committee.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, it would be great to have more voices from the AAPI community.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So again, if you're interested, drop a comment. Somebody will respond, I'm sure. So what about you, Nicole? What are kind of some issues that you, talk about? Again, I know there's always the pressures of being the voice of the table and trying, like Henry said, not to speak on all the issues because you kind of are that one voice, but some things you just don't know, and it is a lot of pressure. But kind of how's it been for you to kind of be that voice at the table?
Well, I think it's always the interesting question, because when you're there and people turn to you and say, well, what do Black people think about this? Or what do LGBTQ people think about this? Yes. And you're saying, well, we're not a monolith.
Right.
I cannot possibly speak for all LGBTQ plus people. You know what? I can't drink anymore. You guys know I'm not a drinker. And this is...
it's a lot of letters. It's fine.
Yeah, it kicks in very fast. Right. And it's always very difficult to do. And so you have to kind of say, I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak to my lived experience. And then once you do that, you do have to be able to advocate, and sometimes very forcefully, about what's important, and make sure that people understand that there is a different perspective. And sometimes it is the hardest thing to do with people who have good intentions, because they're not always willing to see that they're missing something. So being willing to go in and to advocate and to have somebody else amplify your voice, which is why it's important not to just have a seat at the table, to have other people there with you, and to have allies in the room, and to make sure that you're marshaling all those voices when there's something that you see missing, or something you want added to a policy that's going to be coming up that's going to impact your community, or quite frankly, everybody, which is very important. And I think that's something that we always need to work on and think about. Oh, and by the way, Henry, I cannot help it because I am from Iowa, and the idea of having a room for a Latino caucus that hadn't been formed yet, it's the if you build it, they will come mentality.
Yes.
So, Field of Dreams was filmed in Iowa, right outside my hometown. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But I mean, I think that's one of the things that we always think about when you're in a room and you're by yourself. And sometimes it is very, very difficult because you can feel like you're fighting a battle by yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, not only do you have to be that, sometimes you have to be that one voice, but it's also hard to speak louder than others when you are only one voice.
Right. You're screaming into a void.
Yes.
But, you leave the meeting, shake it off, call a few people who've been there before, and you call the trailblazers, and you call the people who've been the first, and say, hey, how did you do this? And what did you do? And you buck up and you go back into the next meeting and keep on going. So that's been my experience. And
close a
still
stress
here.
cycle, close one stress cycle, walk into another. That's what that sounds like.
But it's fun, actually, and it's entertaining. And and I think as long as you keep in mind what you're actually there for, it's fine. I think when people lose sight of what the end goal is, that's when they tend to run into the most trouble. So if you keep in mind why you're actually in the room,
yes,
that's what matters. So if you remember you're there to serve people, if you remember you're there to make the community better, or if you're there because you're meant to fill potholes, then that's what's going to happen. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree. Sometimes it comes back to sometimes being the one voice in the room doesn't mean you have to, speak on that. You're also there for, so many other reasons. And what some people always ask me, like, what are some issues of LGBTQ folks? Well, we're also still Hoosiers and everyday Americans, and we still have, we still need, curbs on the side of the road like you do. Like, it's not just always about, having to be that one voice, but just saying that we're all, intertwined, and that, the communities all mix into one. So it's, great. Great.
Ironically, I said earlier that my background is in education, and when I was the only Latinx elected official in the metropolitan area of Indianapolis, I was asked to talk about many other issues, and I didn't know anything about potholes. But our wonderful city council member, Zach Adamson, nominated and appointed me through the city council to serve on the Board of Public Works in Indianapolis.
I don't know anything about potholes.
So I dealt with a lot of potholes in education in my life, but now I'm actually dealing with the actual potholes. And I'm not sure there's a gay way or a straight way to fill a pothole.
There's just one way. Yeah.
But at least there's a voice. And if there's, whether there's
Absolutely.
a gay voice on filling potholes.
But that's what it's about. It's about kind of overcoming those fears, because you don't have to be, take it back to the basics. You don't have to speak on behalf of everything that you are, but speak on what you know. And that, means a lot, because you're there for a reason. And it's to make a difference because you care about people, and sometimes because you want to fill a pothole. So absolutely right.
Yeah. So in partisan offices, I do want to give a shout out to Zach Adamson, who was the first openly gay Democrat to be elected to office. And actually, it's the Democratic Party members who elected, the first African American, elected, LGBTQ person, the first trans person from a county position or a city position in Indiana, trans person. They're all Democrats, and our party has done more to ensure we have a big tent. Yes, there's more room to grow our tent, but this is the tent that welcomes everybody, and we need to ensure that that we have people coming up the pipeline, because there are many elections to win in the future, and we need more good Democrats, good LGBT people, good people of color to run.
Absolutely. That I hope that'll probably be said. We got some time, maybe 3 more times. Then maybe we'll actually get some people to run. That's exactly what we need. But I mean, it's great to be there, great to put that step forward. But sometimes you kind of need those individuals to push you. So who were some of your role models or people that you looked up to, not only in the history of the LGBTQ movement or even within politics, but maybe within your own life or, your communities that you, kind of what was it that, made you step up and decide to run, and who you look to for guidance and strength? Nicole?
Well, I'm going to sound about as corny as anybody could sound, because I looked at my mother.
Answer. Oh,
what?
I said there's no wrong answer. Your mother is also my role model. That's perfect.
Well, I mean, so I mean, I mentioned before, my mother is an elected official, so she is just hands down. She's an amazing woman. So I'm not even going to pretend that I don't think she's like incredible. But she went back to school when I was in high school and went to law school, and then she was a single mom, and she raised us, went back to school, went to law school, and decided to run for office when she was much, much older and much further, through her adult life than most people usually do. And when it came time to run for office, I was in a similar position, and I talked to her a great deal about whether or not I could do it. And then when you talk about whether or not you're going to run for office, you want to look to people who know you well and know the terrain that you're going to be running in. And she was a huge guiding force. And I look to the women around me, and I'm lucky to live in a community with a lot of great women. So there are women like Shelley Yoder, who lives here, and she is just, she's outstanding. So she's somebody else that I look up to, and Vi Simpson. And so when I look at women who I want to model myself after, those are the women that I look to, and I'm kind of say yes. So.
Yeah, it's kind of when I think of all the women that I look to, it's hard not to think of at least three in Monroe County or that area. I mean, absolutely, some powerhouses. So that's great. What about you, Henry?
Well, I would say that first of all, my inspiration was my graduate school my graduate school dorm mate, I guess, Bruce Ballard, who gave me the courage to fight some battles, including we were at Columbia University together, and my partner and I were living essentially in a tiny single dorm room because he would sleep over at nights. And one day we decided to why couldn't we in 1987 ask for married student housing? And so we applied for housing at Columbia University that was strictly offered for married people, and it was rejected. And anyway, it took 6 months to finally get it done, but we got the policy changed. So in the long path to marriage equality, some of these steps happen along the way in which relationships are recognized, and we were able to get that I think was the second college in America that allowed same-sex partners to move into married student housing in New York City. But his roommate in college, undergraduate school, was a guy by the name of Tom Duane, whom I met while I was in graduate school. And Tom Duane was the first openly gay city council member in the city of New York, and he ran for state senate, New York State Senate, and won. He is also known as the first HIV positive elected official that also won an election. And Tom was my inspiration, and if someone like Tom can fight the battles, I certainly can. So he was my hero.
Wow, that's awesome. Can't beat that. I mean, also like your college dorm roommate. I'm gonna have to get a documentary film around here for Henry, because this sounds like a lifetime of achievements, and just it's so incredible to not only get those responses, and that kind of, sometimes you don't even realize until later how much somebody in your past has made such a difference. So how do you speak to those who are maybe not only thinking about running for office, but just in any capacity kind of thinking about being or needing to step up to kind of be a voice at the table, and to kind of put themselves in a situation that they might be uncomfortable with? I mean, Henry, not only did YMCA kind of say, oh, okay, that's fine, but you didn't stop there, and you said this, thank you for that for me, but I'm going to continue this for everyone else, and not stick with it to kind of get that policy change. So like, what would you say to people who were maybe thinking about taking that step?
Sure. And well, I think the best words I can use, I'm going to paraphrase it, during John F. Kennedy's inauguration speech, when he said, if not you, who? If not now, when? If not here, where? So there comes a time when you feel the calling, and it may be a personal situation like mine. My two kids started in an elementary school, and that motivated me to run. When I also worked on marriage partner benefits at a Fortune 10 company, I wanted health care for my spouse, for my partner at the time. And something will motivate you to run. You will know when it's time to run. And if it's not then, when is the time? Because we need it for not just your own personal gain, but for our community's gain. What has taught us over the last 5 years since the election of Donald Trump is that the gains we have made are very fragile, extremely fragile. Our fight is not over. Our marriage equality fight could be reversed with a new Supreme Court. Our policies, including transgender serving in the military, was reversed by Donald Trump. So our protections are very, very fragile, and that's why we need people to step up and run. Because what was that saying? If you don't have a seat at the table, you're part of the meal. You're going to be eaten, and we've seen that time and time again. We've got to have not just allies, but we've got to have openly gay LGBT people, especially people of color, in these positions.
Absolutely. And if you're unsure, call any of us three if we will get you there. Do you have anything to add there, Nicole?
Well, I would also say that a lot of times people get so hung up on the idea of the need to run for office that they forget that there are other things you can also do. And so I always encourage people, sometimes you simply cannot run for office for whatever reason. There are other things you can do, and you can build it into your life. So if you only have 5 minutes, you can send an email, you can send a text message, you can make a phone call. There are other things you can do. You can attend meetings. You can actually participate in the process, and you can reach out to your neighbors to get them to do the same. So you can actually achieve some level of critical mass and actually reach out and get people involved in the process. Even if you can't run for office, you can find somebody else who can and gather up people to really get some numbers behind your efforts. And I think people forget that sometimes, that it's not just one person who can do it. You can get other people to join in and just, grab your neighbor and say, hey, look, I know you and I don't always agree on the fence height, but we can agree that we need to get the neighborhood cleaned up. Let's go over to this meeting right now that's happening in half an hour and talk to our elected officials and hold them accountable for this stuff that's going on. It is vitally important that we actually follow through, because it's not just the voting or the getting people elected, it's everything that happens in between the elections. And when we don't do that, when we just stop after election day, that's when things actually fall apart. We have to pay attention. And so those are the things that I talk to people about. It's not just getting people elected, it's following through time and time again.
Yeah,
people forget about that too.
All the time.
And, Nicole, you make such an excellent point, and I'm going to kick myself for not remembering, but you make a very good point, because a segment of the Latinx population and other populations is undocumented. They cannot run for office. However, people from the undocumented community have made a difference in campaigns. J.D. Ford's one of the persons who was fighting for J.D. Ford to get elected and beat Senator Delph was a young woman by the name of Guadalupe, whose name I'm not going to say by last name, but Guadalupe was critical part of his campaign, undocumented person. Last year, when Christina Hale was running for office, I got a call from an undocumented LGBT student at Butler asking me to vote for Christina Hale. So we can get involved, even if you're not planning to run or you can't run. We can get involved in elections to ensure that we have the right people in office.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the state party has had, DACA employees who cannot run who can't even vote, but who give up their time, talent, treasure, shout out to D, for the Democratic Party and can't vote. And I took her into a polling booth with me because she'd never seen it before. And it was primary day in Marion County. And I thought, this ought to be kind of easy, right? So, this is my, I don't know if I said my friend or what, but I said she's going to come with me, into the booth to kind of assist and see how this goes, just because she had never seen the process. There are so many other ways to get involved. So it's always great to keep that in mind. And there are always things to do, especially in an off year. Like you said, Nicole, like when elections stop, the work doesn't. And when we stop, we fade out. I mean, like if you're not working, then, there's a good chance we're losing somewhere. So it's extremely important. But kind of on a lighter note, so since, most of us are celebrating Pride at home or virtually, how are you guys planning to celebrate Pride Month this month? Nicole? Why are you celebrating Pride? Oh, you don't know. Like, I have too many things? You don't know?
I usually am working a lot during Pride Month. I work all the time. I mean,
that's not convincing people to run for office. You're like,
no, I work because I love my job. So for me, Pride means enjoying the things that I do, and I love my job, and I spend time with my family, and that for me is part of what you do. You celebrate by spending time with the people you love. So for me, it's my family, it's my girlfriend, it's what I get to do, and that's how I celebrate Pride. Nice. By enjoying my love, which is
there's
family,
no wrong
girlfriend.
Answer. Absolutely.
Maybe not finishing my cocktail this evening.
Maybe just not now. Later, it's fine.
Yeah.
No rush. Henry, what about you? What are you planning?
Well, first of all, it's sad that COVID has prevented us from once again getting together here in Indianapolis. Although some places like Washington D.C. have had some live festivals. Mm-hmm. I remember one year, when I was the elected school board member, riding in the back of an antique convertible, Cadillac convertible, with a sign that said "Indiana's only elected official" in the Gay Pride Parade in Indianapolis, with my husband.
Celebrity status.
Yeah, so that was fun, and always going to the festival and the music, etc. That's always great. But one of the special things that I love, and which we're going to be doing this year, we have another couple friends of ours, Tim and James, who have a home with a pool, and they have a gay dads get together during Pride. So it's not a lot of people, but some of within our circle of friends, we have a little gay dads and families get together at their pool. So it's fun.
That
sounds like fun.
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah. Like that also sounds like it should be like an every month thing, but like
I
agree, especially as the weather gets warmer. Yes,
right, every other weekend. I don't know if you know this, you're hosting Dad's Night. So right. Yeah. That sounds awesome. No, that would be. I'm sure that would be great. But also, I guess kind of on that, do you guys have if you're not celebrating Pride, maybe a favorite gay space you like to visit or go to, or an LGBTQ movie or show that you like to watch, or something that people at home might be able to do to celebrate Pride on their own or with others? Anything?
I like to make rainbow colored desserts. So that's like my thing. If I can find something that I can make that's rainbow. I like rainbows. I'm sorry. So that's my thing. And I was... don't
apologize for that.
Oh, no, it's just that I eat the desserts also. So I was at the 3rd District this past weekend, and they had all of these... Oh, they were so pretty. Rainbow colored. They had just all these pretty pies, and they were all lined up, and that was just the most beautiful thing. So I want to make all of those pies and line them up. Maybe not eat them all, but that's for me.
But some of them, most of them.
Yeah. So I'll invite people over to eat pie and have a rainbow pie. But that will be my space. So yeah, you can come if you would like to come. So
Are
please
you
come.
inviting me personally? Absolutely. Yeah. You said
I am inviting you personally, Henry. You know, anybody who's watching and can figure out how to get here, you know.
Absolutely. I'm down for that. What about you, Henry?
Well, during Pride Month, it's so nice that there are periodic documentaries on TV,
Yes.
Yes.
which are just absolutely wonderful. And you could probably catch also things like Paris is Burning, and some other more not as popular videos or films. But I encourage you to just if you're home, scroll through the TV and cable, and you're likely to find some kind of a documentary or film, or even do something fun. Even if it's lots of gay men like to watch Joan Crawford uh, and some of the other women from the 1940s and 50s films. Even some like it hot with Marilyn Monroe. There's some fun movies that people can watch and throughout the month and celebrate.
And there are like categories now. Like Netflix has LGBTQ category. I mean, they've got a whole new with the Queen, I think, is the whole new documentary series on the drag community and things like that. But there are so many things to see and do. And
they've got great documentaries. There was one about a bookstore in San Francisco. What was it called? Circus of Books. Have you guys seen that one?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, you should watch it. It's interesting.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, that's fun.
Cool.
Oh, I'm sure. I believe that. That's what I do every week. I just ask people what their favorite shows are, and I make a list so that I
don't know that I'd call it my favorite, but I thought it was interesting.
Well,
so
I'm adding it to the list. That's all that
Okay.
matters. But
we've been watching Zoe's playlist on I forget which, is it NBC? I don't remember now which one it is, but Zoe's playlist includes it's a show on TV, and it includes a transgender character, anyway, it's really it's a lot of fun because they break out into songs in the middle of the 1 hour show.
And one of our commenters, Dana Black, just said Hulu has Pride, which is a 4-part series.
Yes.
Okay.
I have started that one. That's great. No, I'm not reading.
Does Dana help you with those cupcakes?
No.
Maybe help you eat them. I know. You need somebody. Shout out to Cheryl Lux, who went to the store and brought me a big slice of rainbow cake because she said she saw it and it made her think of me, and it was delicious. Oh, it was so good.
Yeah. Dana's not much of a sweets person, so yeah.
Yes. It's awesome. But so what would be, kind of one takeaway, one piece of advice, whether for the LGBTQ community or even allies, to kind of get their like you said, not run for office, but get their voice at the table, kind of become active, get involved with the community, maybe be a supporter. What are some things that people can do to get involved and get themselves out there? Go ahead, Henry.
So I guess I'm not sure if this is advice, but it's one of the slogans I hear, which is very, very true, is that gay rights are human rights.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are going to have a richly diverse nation, everyone has to ensure that the LGBT community and our communities of color are properly heard and properly involved in decision making. And it sometimes means that those who have the majority need to step aside, need to provide room, and need to encourage and even push and support those that are not at the table to sit with them. So, I encourage all those, friends and allies, and to also continue helping our communities, and we will all be much better place as a
Yeah.
result.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's sometimes it's about bringing your voice to the table and not pulling, not distracting from anything else, but just being, a bridge, or a guiding force, or helping, like we said earlier, somebody that that might be interested in running for office, or supporting them, or being a staffer, or a volunteer. Everybody needs volunteers always. So don't if you don't feel like you fit in a space, but you support that space, then you're already there. So, what would you say, Nicole?
I think I would kind of build on what Henry said, which is it's not making a space, and it's part of building a bench and making sure that you're bringing people along with you, and having those allies, because at this point we are looking around and we're seeing people around who are dedicated to the same vision of where we can be. And so I've been looking around the room lately, and I'm seeing who's not there, and I'm seeing a lot of young people who aren't in the room, or a lot of young Asian people in the community are not being there, or the Disability Caucus, which, if I'm not mistaken, was formed a few years ago, but still isn't in the central committee, right? And so I think it's not just enough to, it's not enough to, have a seat at the table, but to really reach out, build the bench, make the space. And we, as people of color and LGBTQ plus people, need to be prepared to step aside. So the minute we get into the room, we need to start building a succession plan.
Yeah.
For when we step aside also. So, and that's the hardest thing to do for anybody. So I know that when I got elected, the first thing I started doing was planning for when I left office, and that was what we started on day one. So we have this is for the next clerk folder that we work on. And that's a hard thing to do. And I don't know if it's, because somebody's going to take over or whatever else, but it's a hard thing, but we have to plan for the next generation.
Absolutely. Brittany and I call that if you're hit by a bus folder,
Yes.
all the information that you need. If I'm hit by a bus, not to say that I won't be here, and I say that I won't be a voice for our community, but if I'm not here tomorrow, one of you better step up, because we cannot be, we can't afford to not have a voice at the table. It would be great to have all of them. So, again, if you're thinking about it, absolutely. But sometimes it's not about, seeing who's not at the table. It's about seeing who is and saying, okay, they're an ally. How do we make them a better ally? How do we make them more informed, more educated, more loud on our issues when we need them to be, especially when we don't have somebody already there.
And how do we make the room for them, make the plan for them, and give them the space for it? And it's a hard thing to do.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I know it's a hard concept to wrap around, and clearly hard for me to articulate, but that's the thing that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And sometimes, with the younger generation, it's about not only giving the opportunity for them to, be a part of it, but almost sometimes you gotta step back to kind of force them and say, listen, like you can do this. You can, you're, some of us will be the first and we won't be the last. So, yes, you two both know, it's great to be the first, but you don't want to be the last. You want to be able to kind of get to the top of that ladder and turn around and pull somebody else up. So that's always, great to keep people involved, and, active and in the room. So any other takeaways before we, anything else you want to add before we wrap up? What? Nothing? Okay.
It's
Don't tell me what.
Well,
Go
I
ahead,
was going to
Nicole.
say, I'm really grateful for leaders like Henry who've moved through spaces before us and who've set the tone. So I'm grateful for the work that you've done for the party and continue to do for our party. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and you're an inspiration as well, and hope that you will carry the party forward also, carrying uh, many flags, not just the rainbow flag.
Although the rainbow is gorgeous, but all of them.
Very pretty.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. We appreciate not only your dedication, sacrifice, I'm sure, absolutely, to not only the party and your communities, but to everyone, Hoosiers in general. So thank you. Thank you for being here, and happy Pride. Cheers
Happy
to cheers to
Pride.
both of you. Great
Yes.
to see you.
Cheers, cheers.
Yes.
Yeah. Happy Pride.
Go celebrate. Thank you both.
Bye. Nicole, great job. Thank you.
Thank you.